Okay, we'll now get started, colleagues. So, good afternoon and welcome to Inverclyde Council's Policy and Resources Committee. As you'll all be aware, the meeting is entirely remote today due to the high levels of COVID circulating in our community. As usual, the meeting will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast, available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. The data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with the Council's published policies available through the Council's websites. And I would remind members of the committee of the Council's established meeting protocols and including the use of the chat facility. So with that, we'll move to item 2 in our agenda, which is apologies, substitutions and declarations of interest. So we don't have any apologies or substitutions today because we've got full house. I noticed Councillor Cully's got a declaration of interest with regard to item 7, and Councillor McElhenney's got a declaration. Councillor McElhenney, you want to specific on your declaration?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Item 10, paragraph 5.10. I'm a trustee for that mentioned charity.
Okay, thanks for that, Jim. And Elizabeth, Councillor Robertson's put a declaration for item 10 in the agenda on the chat function as well. Okay, any further declarations of interest?
Financial fitness.
Okay. Chris, do you want to mention your declaration specifically?
Yes, thank you. It's on page 69 of big page 69, agenda item number 7. The company I work for, ACOM, is mentioned as undertaking external condition surveys, but I just want to mention the fact is that I did not take part in those surveys, having no direct involvement, and I believe anything is so remote as not to affect my judgment. Any matters raised in the paper?
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. Any other declarations of interest? No. Okay, so that takes us on to item 2, which is the COVID-19 update, and Martin is going to speak to that. Martin.
Thank you, Convener. This is the usual COVID update report. Section 4 has some general background, including the current rate. I'll maybe just expand on that a wee bit, insofar as day is about 1,784 cases per 100,000. That's exceptionally high, but the positive thing is that is actually just starting to show a fall. So we appear to have possibly peaked last week, and this also appears to be the case for Scotland as a whole and Glasgow and Clare. So the trend appear to now be slightly going down, not rapidly, but it's at least something positive. So Section 4, background, as I've said. Section 5 has your usual roundup of workforce and absences, workforce issues and absences. Section 6 is an update on the hybrid working pilot. You'll obviously not be surprised to know that the CMT is taking the view that the hybrid working pilot needs to be kept under review because of the very high rates we have currently in Inverclyde, and that will be reviewed in a couple of weeks' time. Section 7 is an update to the People and Organisational Development Strategy. Section 8 is an update on some impacts in education services owing to the very high rates in the last week. Section 9 is an update on business support, 10 on where we are with the vaccination strategy, and Section 11 is an update on where we're going with testing and surveillance in light of the Scottish Government's announcement of their Test and Protect transition plan a week ago today. I'm happy to take any questions, or the individual officers who lead on the various items will do so. I should maybe add that the intention is that this is the last COVID update report. That's certainly the plan. However, we can never be too sure, and COVID's caught us out a few times in the past, but that's the intention at this point.
Okay, thanks for that, Martin. Any questions, colleagues, or comments? Maybe while people are thinking. Can I ask Stephen McNabb maybe for an update in terms of the jobs refresh programme, how that's been going?
Yes, thank you, convener. Yeah, through yourself, we've had some success in terms of that programme. As you'll probably know, we are still at the early stages of the programme. We had 56 employees that actually left the service of the organisation and that have signed up to leave. Not all of them have actually left yet, but to date we have created I think it's 37 vacancies that have been recruited through the local community. I'm delighted to say 34 of them were recruited from the local community, and 11 of them were recruited from the local unemployed population. So that's a sort of an initial position as at the end of March, convener. The programme is designed to run up until June 2023. And by that time, we'll have a much fuller picture of the extent of the success of the programme. We hope to sort of generate, as people leave, there'll be knock-on effects and knock-on vacancies that will become available to the local community. So certainly we will have a full evaluation of the programme throughout next year, and certainly for the summer of 2023. But certainly the programme, there's been some success to date in terms of what the objectives of the programme was, and that's getting local community into jobs, particularly those that are currently unemployed and maybe furthest from employment. So that's the current position at the moment, convener, if that's helpful.
Yeah, very helpful, Stephen. Thanks for that update. That sounds very positive so far in terms of outcomes. Jim, Councillor Clocker, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I suppose it's just a general question. Martin, you had actually said this is our last COVID update, and we're sitting here with probably some of our highest figures that we've had in Inverclyde. We're sitting, you know, I just had the acute services this morning where they were telling me about 1,200 staff off in the health service. You know, the amount of admissions we had in hospital. Why would this be the last COVID update? What is the thinking behind? Right, I understand from the Scottish Government's point of view, but that's a decision we're taking locally within the CMT, that that's the last COVID update. I'm just trying to get the thought behind why, if that makes sense to you.
Okay, Martin.
So I suppose one of the main issues is that with the Test Protect transition plan and the things becoming this acceptance that COVID is endemic, we won't necessarily know what the COVID rate is post-April. I mean, we'll get probably estimates of it from the small number of health and social care staff who are being tested, but there'll be no testing for the general population. So effectively, COVID at that point will be treated like the common cold, insofar as people will get it, they'll be off work, but there'll be no requirement to self-isolate because people won't know they've got it necessarily. And when I say there's no testing, there won't even be testing for people who are symptomatic. So we'll be very limited in what we could say, I suppose, is what I'm saying. And a lot of the other initiatives and programs, for example, self-isolation support grants, end at the end of April. So yes, it's going to be there, but what we're going to be able to say about it might be limited. And there's no way around the fact that, yes, the impacts at the moment are quite significant in terms of staff absence. And in terms of, I think Alan Stevenson will probably confirm, in terms of pressure on the NHS, but in terms of people going into intensive care and becoming ill, yes, there are some people dying who are positive for COVID, but it's nothing like it has been in the past, and the number of people in intensive care is nothing like it has been in the past. So it's more like we would get with flu in a normal winter when we had winter flu. So yeah. Things may change, okay. And if we get a new variant, then that might be a game changer that requires updates to committee. But I think the basic fact is we'll be limited in what we can say.
Thanks, Martin.
Okay, I'll bring the Chief Executive in before I bring Councillor McElhinney in.
Thanks very much, Convener. It's just to say, Jim, that we will obviously keep it under review, and we're very mindful of it. But as we move through spring and summer, we've been told there'll be a significantly better arrangements in relation to COVID, and that the rates should go down dramatically. But we will keep it in review. And just to remind members that any outstanding actions from the organisational recovery plan or the recovery plans are going into the Directorate CDIPs. So members will still see it, and we will still be talking about COVID recovery. We just won't have a specific report named COVID.
Okay, thanks for that, Louise. Jim, Councillor McElhinney.
Thanks, Convener. A question's probably for Ruth regarding the COVID restrictions. Are they all lifted now for our schools? Or is there still some that maybe it's just doing as guidance, for example, ventilation, that type of stuff, common sense maybe approach?
Ruth?
So the just as you say, the guidance common sense approach is in. So we're still looking at one-way systems. We're still looking at what the general public would be doing about mask wearing, but very much the ventilation in classrooms is seen as the key option, making sure that the CO2 is monitored by the natural ventilation, open windows, yeah, the issue we will have is coming up to the SQA exams, making sure we've got contingency arrangements in place for that, making sure we're giving the young people the best possible arrangements. But we've got that in hand alongside the SQA and nationally as well.
Okay, any other member want to come in? No. Okay, I'm just aware that Martin is returning to his substantive post, I think, at the start of April. He's been acting up, obviously, in terms of coordinating the council's response to COVID over the last 2 years. And I think on your behalf, I'd like to show our appreciation to Martin for all the work he's done over that period. He's done an excellent job. So we thank you, Martin, for all your good work during the last 2 years. I know, based on what you've told us, we're not out of the woods in terms of COVID. Hopefully, we're going to see that reduction that the Chief Executive is talking about in the coming weeks. But I think, as we all know, at this point in time, COVID is rife in our communities, and I think we all need to be very careful over the coming weeks and stick to whatever mitigations are in place. Okay, thanks for that, colleagues. So moving on to item 3, the 21-22 revenue budget update. Alan's going to speak to that.
Thank you, Convener, and good afternoon, everyone. This report updates regarding the committee's own budget, which is projecting an underspend of £154,000 for 21-22, with the increase in underspend due to an increase in the unused inflation contingency plus one-off COVID monies, which have been used to offset a budget pressure within the finance service. The general fund overall is reporting an underspend of £1,093,000. The vast majority of this increase is due to the receipt of extra Scottish Government funding for specific initiatives that won't be spent by the 31st of March and will be carried forward into the reserves. And this explains the projected surplus free reserves of £881,000 as shown in Appendix 8. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Any questions from members? Don't see any in the chat function, so can we agree the recommendations? Okay, thank you. That takes us on to item 4, which is the Policy and Resources Capital Budget and the 2021-24 Capital Programme. Again, Alan.
Thank you. This report updates the position of the 21-24 Capital Programme for the committee and overall. The 22-25 Capital Programme that was approved in February will be reported to future committees. The main issue to highlight in the overall capital programme and the committee's own capital programme is the slippage. For overall, it is 16.4% for 21-22. But this year hasn't been typical. It's been another atypical year, in particular with supply side delays and problems in terms of the delivery of projects, contributing to the overall slippage. The usual analysis of the outturn against projections, against budget, will be reported to the August Policy and Resources Committee, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Any questions from members? Tommy, Councillor McVeigh.
Yep, thanks very much, Convener. Alan, a question on 2.3. Given the anticipated cut in our capital budget and also in the current economic climate, it's unlikely we're going to see any reduction in costs. Still prudent in the capital programme, or is that something we should maybe look at phasing out over the next few years? I'm just interested in your thoughts on that, please, Alan.
Alan?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. The 5% over provision on the basis that the cost estimates from officers are kept up to date and are future-proofed should be sufficient and should be retained. What the risk is if costs are generated 2 or 3 years ago, and given the increase we've had in material prices across the board, then there is a danger that when items go out to tender, that they will come back significantly more than the allowance in the budget. But one of the roles that we have as officers and the technical officers have within their services is to keep these matters under review. Most of the council's budget is allocation based, so there's an allocation for roads, there's an allocation for property rather than project based. So there's less of a risk there. It just means we get less done for the money that we've got. But where we've got a specific project, and I'm just using one as an example, like the learning disability facility that is still to go out to tender, then I know that Eddie and his team are keeping that under review and will report back on the basis if they believe more money is required. And I know that's being looked at the moment by colleagues in property services.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Thanks for that. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thanks, Tommy. Any other questions, colleagues? Nope, don't see any. Can we agree to recommendations? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 5, finance services update. Alan, again.
Thank you. This report covers a relatively wide range of issues that have been progressed by the finance services and IT services. Specifically on the revenues and benefits side, there is updates in respect to the self-isolation support grants, which, as Martin indicated earlier, indications are they're going to cease in their current format at the end of April. Saying that, demand levels are as high as they've ever been. We're getting about 30 applications a day coming through. And the team is still diverting a large amount of its core resource to dealing with these, with support from other services. Regarding the cost of living awards that were agreed as part of the budget process, we're hoping to get the letters out this week in respect of the £350 payment to approximately 10,000 households. That'll be another significant piece of work to be carried out by the service. There are updates in respect to the Scottish Welfare Fund and the Tenants Grant Fund, where uptake has been less than we would have expected, but the money will be carried forward into 22-23 and hopefully expended then. There are also updates provided in respect of the ICT and digital strategies, and also an update in respect of accountancy and the initial discussions with the external auditors regarding planning for the year-end process. If there's one matter, Convener, I could highlight, it's in 6.4 of the agenda, where the report indicated that from the 28th of February, service desk hours would increase, opening at 8 o'clock rather than 8:30 in the morning, and was planned that by the end of this month that the service desk could be open till 6 o'clock. Just to say, a pause has been put on that pending further discussions with the employees and the trade unions, but obviously the intention is that these increased hours will be implemented as soon as practical. and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks for that, Alan. Any questions, colleagues? Elizabeth, you want to come in? Councillor Robertson?
Thanks, Convener. It's really just a comment rather than a question. I think I'm passing back to team. Just thanks for the incredible amount of work that has happened. That was not anticipated, that has had to happen and be brought into place in very short timescales, processes and systems built from nothing. And we really do appreciate it, because it's been, in many cases, the conduit between the money that's been available in the system and actually helping the people in Inverclyde. So can you pass back to the team? Thanks for all of that.
Yeah, I think those are comments we all made. We'd all endorse it. I think the staff and finance service, ICT service have been doing a fantastic job during the last 2 years in particular, dealing with all this change. And obviously the same goes for all staff across the council. Okay, any other questions or comments, colleagues? No, okay, agree recommendations again. Right, that takes us on to item 6, corporate policy and performance update report, and Andrina's going to speak to that report.
Thank you, Convener. So this report covers 3 key areas relating to corporate policy. The first one is the publication of the 2021 Local Government Benchmarking Framework data, which was published on the 4th of March. 95 indicators across a range of service areas have been published, data published for 74 of them in a further report, and will come back to committee as further data is released. Section 5 of the report provides information on all the indicators, and members will be able to see also in terms of the appendix the whole range of indicators. It's probably helpful to point out that this is obviously the first year of COVID data that we've had available. There's also some new indicators in there, and as I've already said, there's some data not yet been published. So as much as we welcome the LGBF framework, it's perhaps not as easy to compare this year's data with last year's data, and we just need to be cognizant of that. Just previously to committee, we held an elected member briefing where I presented this in a presentation form, and I'm happy to send that out to all members. The second area on the report, section 5, is relating to best value, and just a quick update to say that there's been new information published by the Accounts Committee relating to our public performance reporting and how we need to be able to evidence how we provide our performance information to the public in a form that's easy to understand, and that we're able to evidence best value through self-assessment, service review, etc. So we've just been making sure that our information on the website is up to standard, and will continue to do so. The second part of the best value update is just the usual reports that we pick up on. The last 3 local authorities to have their best value assurance reports undertaken, Eastern Bartonshire, South Ayrshire and Falkirk, and there's information relating to them. There's a further 4 councils with a follow-up report for 1 other council due in 2022, and then Audit Scotland will revert to the new process for best value, which will be ongoing assurance work. The last section of this report is the Corporate Equality Outcomes Improvement Plan. Previously, Council approved the 5 outcomes, and this is really just the action plan to go along with that. So in terms of recommendations, we're asking you to note the information in relation to LGBF and also best value, to approve the action plan in terms of the equality outcomes, and agree to an annual monitoring report. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks for that, Andrina. Any questions, colleagues, comments? No, I don't see any chat. Andrina, that was a helpful presentation you gave earlier, and I think it would be useful for all the members who didn't get a chance to attend the presentation to get a copy of the slides, so if you could send those out. No, nobody else want to come in? Okay, so can we agree recommendations? Yeah. Okay, again, just to maybe to mention that Andrina, who's been acting up as a corporate policy manager, will be returning to her substantive post in the near future. So again, thank you for Andrina for all the work you've done in your acting up position. Okay, that takes us on to item 7, Capital Strategy 2022-2032, actually, a 10-year strategy. Alan's going to speak to that.
Thank you, Convener. And this report and the following report in relation to the Treasury strategy are two key documents which feed into the overall financial strategy for the Council. The capital strategy, which is a statutory requirement, provides a long-term view of the affordability and highlights future decisions likely to be required in respect of the maintenance of some of the Council's key assets. In the medium to long term, unless there's a step change in the level of Scottish Government grant funding, then the Council faces difficult choices regarding which assets to maintain and which assets to dispose of. And this will feed into the work for the new Council and the financial strategy and the budget considerations of the new Council. The document requires to be approved by the full Council. I realise there's a lot in this document, and either myself or relevant officers in terms of the asset management plan status are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks for that, Alan. Okay, members, any questions on this document? Nope, don't see any questions. We're happy to agree the recommendations. Yeah, kind of thumbs up from Councillor McElhenney. Okay, thanks for that. Moving on to item 8, Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy 2022-23 to 2025-26. Again, Alan.
Thank you. This report is slightly more technical in nature and covers a slightly shorter period, and again requires to be referred to the full Council for consideration and approval. The Treasury focuses on the cash flows, the borrowing and the funding of the Council's capital strategy, and sets limits which officers need to operate in for the forthcoming year. This is a complicated area, and training session will be organised for all elected members following the Council election in the summer and early autumn. Again, I realise there's a lot in this document, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions from members? Alan, maybe I could just ask a question in terms of sort of the steady rise there is in interest rates and the potential for that to continue. So what is the sort of likely impact on the Council of that? How exposed are we to any increases in interest rates?
At this point in time, Convener, the interest rate increases are marginal, and the vast bulk of the Council's borrowing is in the long term, so interest rates would need to go up quite a bit more before it became an issue. As we can see from the report, there's a limited amount of new borrowing to take place, estimated to take place over the next 3-4 years. So in the context of having borrowings of £180 million, borrowing £10 million at 0.5% more is going to be at the margins. On the positive side, it means that we will get more interest on our investments, but the Council's whole strategy is to run its investments down, so to avoid borrowing, but to use the money that we've got, that we're only maybe getting 0.3, 0.4% interest in. So as always, the swings and roundabouts when it comes to Treasury, but I think the overall impact will be relatively negligible at this point in time. If interest rates were to get back up to 3, 4, 5%, then it becomes a completely different issue.
Okay, thanks for that, Alan. Any other questions, colleagues? No, can't see any. Okay, can we agree with the recommendations again? Thank you. Okay, that takes us on to item 9, Procurement Strategy 2022 to to 2025. And Eddie, I think, is going to lead off on that.
Yep, thanks, convener. And can I just take this opportunity to apologise to the committee for the late issue of a revised Appendix 1 to the strategy, and it was an issue we had with version control when we were having the website version of the strategy pulled together. Apologies for that. There's no change to any of the text in the appendix. The only changes are to some of the dates and the target dates, but all those target dates remain within the first year of the strategy. The report presents a procurement strategy for 2022 to 25 for approval. The strategy builds upon the previous strategies and reflects the increasing focus on the positive impact that procurement can have on stimulating local economic activity, including progressing some of the key areas of activity such as Fair Work First and Net Zero. The report includes an overview of some of the key proposals in section 5. The performance against the strategy will be measured against the action plan mentioned before, included within Appendix 1. And within that action plan, there's some key activities, including developing and expanding the existing social value and community benefits procedures, improved spend analysis and compliance, reviewing processes for engagement and support of local SME and supported businesses, climate literacy training and how to incorporate net zero implications at contract strategy stage, etc. The work will also include ensuring that some of our existing documents, such as the Council's construction charter, are reviewed and integrated with the overlapping areas of activity, such as Fair Work First. And just a final note for committee is indicated within the summary and recommendations that the update and the annual procurement reports will now be provided to the Environment and Regeneration Committee in line with the recently revised and approved scheme of administration. So that's that the committee approve the recommendations, and David and myself are here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Eddie. Any questions, colleagues? Chana, you want to come in?
Just a question on 5.3. I was interested in, it says community benefits. Does that mean it gives us a bit more leeway? We can actually deal with companies locally who might be slightly over the price of the best value? Because you look at it, the benefit is that firm could go out of business and it would cause us more people to be unemployed. Has that happened before? And I just wonder if this was a bit of a door opening for us, convener.
Okay, Eddie or David?
Yeah, through you, convener. I'll come in first, and then David may want to come in if I don't cover all the points. But I mean, the existing approach we have just now tries to incorporate community benefits in a lot of the larger scale construction projects and the majority of the goods and services procurements. What we're trying to do is expand that into lower value construction activity, but also look at different ways of achieving community benefits. So introducing different interventions and maybe easier ways for people to make a contribution rather than just the kind of traditional ones we see through the construction side of apprentices and and training for individuals. So it's trying to approach it in a wider sense and achieve more, although it's not all through large scale items. David, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think that covers most of it, Eddie. Just obviously maybe just to state that it has been done in conjunction with other partners and aligned to City Region Scotland Excel and tying in with supplier development programmes and stuff like that to make sure what we're doing is the best possible solution available within the marketplace, to make sure we leverage our spend and make sure that the community benefits, social value, whatever you want to call it, are delivered locally within Inverclyde. That's the key message we're trying to get across here.
So, David, I think Councillor Rebecca's question was around, are we able to take account of the fact that it is a local company competing against external companies in the assessment criteria that used and determine who the tender is awarded to? Is it possible to do that?
The black and white and the short answer for you, convener, is no. Effectively, everybody will be treated fairly and transparently in a way through the evaluation criteria. But what I would say is some of the changes that have taken place recently in relation to the contract standing orders having increased thresholds to allow us to target local suppliers and actually invite them, and that getting followed on by the introduction of a local procurement policy will support that. So we'll be engaging with key partners to make sure that, as well as local suppliers, to understand how we best meet their needs and show that Inverclyde's open for business, particularly for locals. I think the big increase in spend thresholds from 25,000 to 50,000 for goods and services and up to 250 from 100,000 in works means that for those spend thresholds where there is quite a lot of spend going through, we can specifically target local suppliers and make sure that they're invited and you know, hopefully they'll participate in that, and that should give us, you know, a much better outcome than what we've had historically. But again, we'll be working with these suppliers and partners moving forward to develop the best possible local procurement strategy. But in relation to criteria and assessment, everybody would be treated the same.
Okay, thanks, David. Elizabeth, Councillor Robertson, you want to come in?
Thanks, Convener. So my question's about the sort of section 5 of the covering paper, and just again, you know, the proposals that we're outlining in this section, I think are really great. You know, they're things that we really do want to do. We do want to see community benefits. We do want to see local businesses supported where that's at all possible. We do want to look at our net zero strategy and achieving that. We want to see all these things happen. And how even in that as the strategy moves forward. And I'm just, I guess it's probably more an ask than a question, to be honest. Really honing in on these when we're reporting back to us, and just or whoever. I mean, intentions that we have are coming to fruition. You know, I don't feel that I've ever had.
You're breaking up a bit, Elizabeth.
We get a base number of how many there are, and we're never happy with it. I'll put my video off. Sorry. I think we just need more detail on how these things happen. I really want to see the story of how we use procurement to help us with net zero.
Breaking up.
That we think that we're doing things right in terms.
The original part.
Councillor Wilson, we're getting the gist of what Councillor Robertson's saying.
Thanks for the translation.
Okay, you finished, Elizabeth?
I probably should be. It's not helpful. Yeah.
Okay, Eddie, I'm sure you got the gist of that. You want to comment?
I did. Thanks, Convener. Through you, I mean, as the report indicates, we will be reporting back on how we're progressing the strategy as part of a kind of 6-monthly report to the Environment and Regeneration Committee. But you know, that will have the detail of how we're performing against all the action plan areas, and these areas in the action plan address all these things that we've mentioned in section 5 of the covering report. So there should be, you know, sufficient opportunity for us to provide the detail, I think, as much as we possibly can in these update reports, without overloading you with too much information. David, I don't know if you want to assist, any add to that?
No, that covers it.
Well, and it will also obviously give elected members the opportunity to challenge as well if we don't feel that there's enough progress being made in these areas. Okay. Elizabeth, you want to come back in? I'd see you put a comment in the chat.
I'm just aware you're not maybe hearing me very well, but just when we contract with others, it would be good to know. That's good. It would be good to know that when we're contracting out with other people, that they also feel that we're doing it well, rather than us just saying that we're doing it well.
Eddie, you want to pick up that point, sort of feedback from suppliers?
Certainly. I mean, obviously, as David has mentioned before in some of his responses, we're always happy to take feedback from suppliers if they think there's better ways of us doing business and how we improve our systems. We also have a requirement to report this back through the annual procurement reports that we will have going forward. So there is that external view coming back from government. But yeah, we're happy, as I say, work with suppliers. And in fact, with some, we regularly get information in through some of the larger suppliers who are also targeting some of these areas to provide their feedback on how they're doing it as well. So it's a two-way street. We're happy to take the feedback both ways.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions or comments, colleagues?
Convener,
You want to come back in?
just on what they were saying earlier, what I was hoping for was Eddie and David, when they're speaking to the people locally, because a lot of them are frightened to apply to do jobs, maybe explain it and see how they can help them through that. That was the other side of it, because there are a lot of people out there, well, that's too big or that's not, you know, I'm frightened and I can't spend the time, we'll say, right through it. But once I've told what they can do and shown once, that would be them. So it'd be quite good to have local people maybe at a seminar or something like that and show them how they can apply for contracts within the council. And that might get some of them going. And it helps, it's worth trying. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, Eddie or David, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's mentioned within the action plan about how we're going to support local businesses, and it's part of how we engage with them. You know, whether that's supplier development days or open days, we do understand that some of the documents that are issued out to the council can be a wee bit daunting, and that's why we need to review all these documents to make sure they're as clear as possible and there's no duplication. And that's a challenge sometimes with so many things coming out that we have to incorporate. But totally appreciate what the point that's been made, and yes, we'll do our best to kind of support local suppliers to make them able to participate, basically.
Okay, thanks for that, Eddie. Okay, with that, can we agree the strategy, colleagues? Thank you. Okay, that takes us on to item 10, Progress and Development of Anti-Poverty Interventions 2021-2023. And Tony, I think, is going to speak to that report.
Thanks, Convener. So yeah, this report sets out the progress in relation to the anti-poverty initiatives, which are funded through the Council's 1.08 million anti-poverty fund. But it also sets out progress in relation to other funding areas that to alleviate poverty and hardship, including the Scottish Government's Winter Support Fund. Just for noting, I suppose some of the initiatives in relation to anti-poverty fund, have taken a while to report any spend, and you'll see that in the appendix. But that's been down to getting contracts in place and the recruitment of staff. That said, I'm confident that the majority of the spend will take place in this year, now that the projects have been established, and Section 7 shows the very good progress made in relation to the allocation of the winter hardship funds and other funds. So it's recommending that committee notes the progress, but also to agree a slight change to the age parameters for the employability project to make sure we capture as many participants in the project as possible. So there's a lot in this report because a lot has happened, but I'll try and answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tony. It is a very comprehensive report. Okay, Ronnie, Councillor Alfield wants to come in.
Thank you. It's 5.4 and 5.5. 5.4 regarding the business startups, the second paragraph said support grants for startup businesses are being progressed. So my first question would be, how are we progressing those ones? And the last sentence or last paragraph in 5.4 refers to the fact that we hope to engage local entrepreneurs to discuss establishing businesses in Port Glasgow Unit Town Centre. So has that happened or will it happen? And the last question I have on this one is food insecurity, and Convener, I probably should declare an interest as a board member of the trust, the Inverclyde Community Development Trust. On 5.5, I just wondered how progress was coming along with regard to the opening of the second pantry in Port Glasgow. Thanks.
Okay, Tony, you want to deal with the second one? I don't know if Stuart wants to deal with the first one.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult for me to give a completely up-to-date picture on how the pantry is progressing, but I can get that to you, Councillor Alfield, when I got off the meeting, and I'll try and get you a completely up-to-date picture about where we're at. But there is a lot of work going into trying to get these things established. I don't know whether Stuart would be able to provide more information on the business startup.
Yep, Stuart.
Through you, convener, all of this relates to the SIMD initiative that we have within Inverclyde, whereby we're looking to start 30 new businesses within SIMD areas. BDA are the contractors who've been appointed to deliver that, and they're rolling out the programme, and we are confident that they will be able to get 30 new businesses complete by March 2023.
Okay, Ronnie, you want to come back in?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Stuart, did you say by 2023? What about the statement here about April 2022? The BDS will engage with local entrepreneurs in Inverclyde. Is that happening, or has it happened?
Yeah, so that's the start of the process, Councillor Alfield.
So it's happening.
It's new start businesses, so the wording is new entrepreneurs.
Yeah, Stuart, I may be not articulating this very well. My point is, have we had those events in Greenock and Port Glasgow Town Hall?
No, it's not Port Glasgow and Greenock
That's the town centre. Have we had those events?
So that engagement is starting, Councillor Alfield.
I see. Okay, thanks.
So the aim's to have it completed by April, Stuart?
Yes.
Okay. Right, Councillor Robertson, Elizabeth, you want to come back in?
Thank you. So my questions are about 5.2 and 5.3. The RISE initiative. I'm just looking at the paragraph above the next steps at the very end of the section there, where we're saying that the community support team has highlighted that identifying a particular cohort of individual men who are ready to engage with the project has been challenging. I'm just finding that quite difficult to understand with the sort of knowledge I have of people who are in recovery, people who have had issues with addiction and criminal justice and all the things that are targeted in terms of this particular investment. And I'm struggling with that statement, to be honest, that it's difficult to identify people who are ready to engage. Is my first point. The second point on that one.
Will we deal with that first, Elizabeth?
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Sure. Okay, Tony, do you want to respond or ask one of your colleagues to respond? Alan's maybe willing to come in.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it demonstrates how difficult and challenging it is to engage and to sustain some of the people that the client group that we're working with here. They are very, very complex and often kind of multifaceted needs, and we have to be absolutely certain that they're able to sustain. So it's not everybody. We can identify a number of individuals, but actually getting them into the programme and engaging with them remains a challenge. So that would be my response to that, based on what I've heard from the lead officers. I don't know whether Alan wants to expand on that.
Okay, Alan Stevenson, you want to come in?
Convener, yes, through yourself, we've had lots of discussions about this. It's a very piece of work, and I suppose for Councillor Robertson, we know that people go through a cycle in relation to addictions, and they kind of move through a kind of pre-contemplation stage into contemplating and then taking action. So that is the human behaviour cycle that we're trying to work with adults. As I said to you, Tony's highlighted how difficult that is, but it's like a number of these things. You could have the same discussion about rehab. We can offer places for rehab. People need to want to take that step, to accept that help. And sometimes if the pre-work isn't done, you can find folk will show up at a rehab facility and then within 24 hours they'll leave. So it's really about putting in that intense support. And we do reckon you need to have a period of time with people to put that support in, because you need to work through practicalities, emotional issues, family issues. So it's not a case of not being able to identify the people as such. It is actually about getting people when they're ready to take that step. And we think if we take this step now, we will maximise opportunities to lift people out of this situation. And I think that's the overriding, improve outcomes for people who live in this area And if we extend that age range, we maximise the opportunities to work with people who are ready to take that step forward. So, as I said, convener, through yourself, it isn't just at the identification of people, it's getting people that are ready to take that step, because it is a big step. So I hope that helps to clarify some of the things that go on in people's head when we're in. And I think it was courageous of the council to take this piece of work on. I think it's admirable. It's really challenging, and the officers are getting stuck in to the task to try and support people, but we will get, this will come good for us. I think if we take this step and extend the age criteria, we will lift people and we'll give them opportunities to improve their life. Thanks, convener.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Elizabeth, you want to come back in? Obviously, you got another question as well.
I have. The kind of second point on that one though is just that I would be not keen at this stage to dilute too much the criteria that we've set for this. I'm looking again at the next steps section where it said, if approved by committee, the team will engage and recruit a wider targeted cohort of men. And I get that in terms of maybe upping the age limit and things, but I think in terms of really targeting it in on people that we know are needing that much more complex support, then I wouldn't want too much dilution, is my tuppence worth on that one. The second...
Elizabeth, before we move on to the second question, Stuart wants to come in, and we also just want to clarify that widening just does mean increasing the age limit. Stuart, you want to come in?
Yeah, through you, convener, just for clarity, it means that the age limit on that cohort will be for men between 18 and 40.
Right, okay, no, that's fine. That gives me a lot of comfort. The 5.3 question that I've got is again just in terms of what's been reported to us really. I'm looking at the next step section again, and I'm seeing something that's quite outputty for us in terms of what we're doing as a system. That we want to do an evaluation and review of referral processes and things. And I just, again, when we're reporting on this type of thing, it's really important to get a sense of the impact on families. And in that particular section, it was something that I didn't feel I was getting. But again, this whole report, I'm fully aware there's lots in this report that we should be really proud of in terms of things that we are doing on the ground and resourcing on the ground to help people who are really vulnerable and who are really struggling. So I'm not trying to detract from that at all, but I do want to sort of see a bit more impact shown.
Okay, Ruth, are you want to come in on that point?
Yeah, fully taking the comments on board. It's very difficult at the beginning of a project to get the actual outcomes and know that they are reliably in place. I think what the team is trying to do is to basically look at the system and look at the types of work, the referrals put in, making sure that the whole process and the system surrounding the child is in place. So I think that they've made it almost a deliberate decision to look at small chunks at a time, because it's very difficult to know whether or not the early interventions have actually made that impact until you wait for a longer term.
Okay, thanks for that, Ruth. Jim, Councillor McElhenney, you want to come in?
Thanks, convener. It's regarding the PDA and the contract about the 30 new businesses in relation to the Baker Street Food Hub. Is that part of the contract, utilising that facility, or is the Baker Street Hub a separate project and getting dealt with on a different piece of work?
Okay, maybe bring Stuart in on that.
Through you, convener, it's completely separate. Clearly, if a new start business is eligible for access to the Baker Street Hub and there is space there, then they'd be considered for it, but it's completely independent.
Okay, Councillor Wilson, David, do you want to come in?
Yeah, it's just regarding 5.2, convener. I would like to commend officers for what they're doing here. I think it's important to have a real good go at this. Elizabeth talks about outcomes. I don't necessarily think the outcomes are all that important, and we shouldn't restrict the project with outcomes. We might end up going nowhere with this, but it's absolutely essential that we do try. And we're putting in a very, very good attempt to try and solve a major problem that we have. There's just one thing, Alan, you touched on rehab. How many residential rehab spaces do we have as a council in Inverclyde?
Okay, Alan.
Convener, through yourself, I can check the actual number. There is a consortium that obviously provide replacements, but we do have access to both national and local organisations. But I think what I'd like to, I can get the actual number for Councillor Wilson, no problem. Just don't have it at the top of my head, but it's the same discussion I spoke about previously in relation to this. It's about getting people to a place where they're ready to take that help. Unfortunately, there's a couple of examples in the last few months where we have tried to offer that facility. We can spot purchase as well, obviously, if it's required, but what we've found in the last couple of months is when people have come forward, they're actually not ready to take that step. So there's a significant amount of pre-work we have to do, Councillor Wilson, to make that a success. Otherwise, what happens is people will get to rehab and they'll leave very, very quickly if they're not ready to take that step. So I can confirm the number. I'll get that number for you.
Thank you. I do understand it's not easy, but I think it's so important we try all sorts of different ways and methods of controlling this problem. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Tommy, Councillor McVeigh wants to come in.
Yep, thanks very much, Convener. A very, very good report, and I think there's a lot of good work going on, and I commend officers for bringing this support to us. I'm kind of in the same camp as Councillor Robertson on this, and I appreciate it's not an exact science, but it would be really good to see the fruits of our labour here maybe further down the line. And is it the intention to bring back further reports on the various sections in here to see how we're doing? And accept, Councillor Wilson, we may succeed in some, we may not in others, but the fact is we're actually making the effort to help people who need it in Inverclyde. And I would just look a degree of comfort that we will get further updates, and the council will get further updates in the next couple of years to see how this work is going on, because it's very important.
Okay, Tony?
Yeah, I can confirm we will bring regular reports back. I think we plan to bring 2 a year back to the committee to show progress. And certainly I've noted everything that people have said today around the outcomes. And I think what we try to show in the next steps is trying to get that activity over the next 6 weeks or so, to show that the projects are dynamic and we are continuing to try to implement them. But certainly we'll bring back future reports on the progress of the spend.
Okay, thanks, Tony. I don't see any other questions, colleagues, so can we agree the recommendations? Great. Okay, that takes us on to item 11, community asset transfers, remit from Inverclyde Council, and Alan Puckerin's going to speak to us, I believe.
Thank you, Convener. This report seeks committee approval for an action plan following a member's request, which was considered at the September Council meeting. The request from Councillors Affeld and Quinn raised a number of concerns regarding the interaction between the Council and community groups in respect of leases and more formal asset transfer requests. The senior multidisciplinary group of officers have reviewed aspects of the current approach and the communications and agree that improvements could be made. An action plan covering these matters is attached at Appendix 1. A key need identified is the need to have a single point of contact at officer level, and to this end it is proposed that the Head of Culture, Communities and Educational Resources, i.e. Tony, who's here today at the committee, would report progress to the Education and Communities Committee on the delivery of the action plan and any specific requests which are identified and progressed. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks for that, Alan. Ronnie, Councillor Alfeld, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I think the first thing I would like to say is thank you, especially to Alan and to the team who have put this action plan together. I mean, it's been pretty clear to us for some considerable time that we didn't have a process. Basically, everything relating to these sort of inquiries was ad hoc, piecemeal, frustrating, no discipline. It really just didn't work properly, and it was really turning people off. And I think, without going over old ground, we didn't think it was the right thing that if there were an organisation who had an individual who wished to make contact with us with regard to a lease or an asset transfer, then there were examples of that individual perhaps being directed to 7 or 8 different council employees. And there was no link up, certainly no internal link up. Basically, you know, it was a matter of telling a different person the same story 6 times over. So it just didn't work. And basically, the time factors were completely unacceptable in trying to run this to ground. Again, without going over old ground, we had experiences of, you know, 3 years from initial request to anything happening and so on. So I'm really pleased, and I'd really, again, like to thank Alan, who had some virtual meetings with us about this, and with some individuals who had been adversely affected by it. I hope the action plan works, and I think the only 2 questions I would have would be about the single point of contact, Alan. That will continue to be the contact throughout the process, not just initially. That would be my first question. So that, you know, when that person, if it's Tony, when that person has been identified, that will be the person who will be contacted by the outside agency and any queries that he has throughout the whole process until that process is put to bed. I guess that would be my first question. Thanks.
Okay, Alan.
Thank you, and thank you for your feedback, Councillor Affeld, as well. I'm encouraged by the engagement that there was with officers from various services of the council, because it's not in their interests either for a sort of an uncoordinated or disparate approach to take place, and the CMT recognises that a single point of contact under Tony's services that is the best way to go here. I would tend to view, I know it's a term we use for elected members, but what we need at officer level is a champion for the groups to get in touch with. It doesn't mean that there won't be occasions where a professional officer will need to contact the group, but all that will be overseen and coordinated through a single point in contact is the plan. And the key for that will be a regular group, which Tony will chair, which has all the disciplines on it. So any issues can be raised and discussed amongst the officers as well. So I would think for the vast majority of times, there would be the single point of contact, and where that single point of contact is not directly involved, would be copied into any correspondence so they can keep an oversight of how things are going.
Okay, Ronnie, you want to come back in?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. That's very helpful, Alan, and I appreciate again very much the action that's been taken here. I have one problem currently outstanding that, Stephen, I don't know whether you want me to be specific today.
Probably not, Ronnie. It's probably better not to be.
Okay. Well, Alan, I do have 1 or 2 questions on one which is going through the process at the moment, that I perhaps can refer to you privately after this meeting, if you don't mind. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ronnie. Any other member want to come in? No. Can we agree recommendations? Great. Thanks for that, colleagues. Okay, moving on to item 12, tender for delivery partner for 2022-23 Energy Efficiency Scotland area-based schemes. And Martin's going to speak to that report.
So thank you, convener. This is simply a report that's come about through the timescales for going to tender and accepting a tender for the area-based schemes, formerly known as we are still waiting for our funding award to be announced, and immediately following that funding award being announced, we'll be going to tender with a view to tender in April and coming back as soon as possible. I think last time we only had 1 successful tender. We just want to make sure that there's no delays in the scheme and that Inverclyde gets the maximum benefit from it. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Any questions, colleagues?
Agreed.
Councillor Wilson, don't be taking over the chairing of this meeting, please. I'm in the chair.
It's a last hurrah, a last hurrah.
For the next 30 seconds. Okay, can we agree on recommendations, colleagues? Okay, so that is the end of our business today, colleagues. But before we finish, can I maybe just say thank you to all the members of the committee over the last 5 years for all their contributions and the courteous way in which they've served on this committee and respected my position as chair. And can I also thank all the officers who've supported us in our work as a committee, and me particularly as the convener over the last 5 years. Very much appreciated all the support that we've had during that period. So this is the last scheduled meeting of this committee before the end of this council term. So I'll leave you with those thanks for all the support that you've given us over the last 5 years. So take care, everyone, and see you soon.